So I want to start by just flashing back about 15 years. How many of you were on the internet 15 years ago? Okay, so you were into listservs and Gopher and all that. Well, back then I started my first email list. It was called www.edu, and it had to do with the role of the web in education. And I was part of a lot of other groups online who all started to freak out when the Kobe earthquake happened almost exactly 15 years ago. And they freaked out because we were talking to people in Japan on these lists, but yet we felt rather helpless. We kept talking to each other and asking, what can we do to help? But there wasn't anything you could do beyond the traditional things of donating blood, donating money, because the internet wasn't mature yet. It didn't have the technology to allow you to take it further than that. And so we had to wait. But we didn't have to wait terribly long. And unfortunately, we then had September 11th. I was in DC when that happened. I was working about 3 blocks away from the White House, and we evacuated after the Pentagon got hit. And I got to my apartment about 10 blocks north of where the State Department is in DuPont Circle. And I needed to do something, so I created an email list called September 11th Info. And we thought we were going to use it to commiserate, but what we ended up doing is we started sharing as much knowledge as we could as to what was going on, such as, was the State Department actually on fire? Which I could tell it wasn't simply by looking out my window. Things had changed because now we realized we could use the internet to donate information during a crisis. And that's what we did. We were trying to figure out which charities were scams, which ones weren't. What could we do to help? What information could we post out there in order to make this day a little easier? Go forward another 3 years and we have the Boxing Day tsunami. Hundreds of thousands of people killed across South Asia, and very few reporters in the right place where they needed to be to report on what was going on. So a group of bloggers who were involved in a project called Global Voices Online created this, the Tsunami Help blog, using blogs and wikis and other tools that didn't really exist or weren't very mature back in September 11th, allowed them to share the latest information that was available as to what was going on the ground, whether it was text or pictures or anything like that. 9 months later, we had Katrina. And once again, blogs came to the fore because we needed some way to talk to each other as to what was going on. I was involved in a project called Katrina Aftermath, and what we did is created a blog but treated it like a wiki, so anyone could edit it, could post on it. They could record a voicemail and make it become a podcast. We just had to give people a chance to share information and donate it to the rest of us so we could figure out what the hell was going on. Flash forward, 2008. The technology is a little better now because we now have social networking tools like Ning, which we didn't have before, just a few years before that. By having these tools, suddenly it became possible for people to really start coordinating with each other. They started doing things such as creating Google Maps with evacuation routes, Google Maps that also had Red Cross shelters, wikis that had every bit of information that was scattered across state and local websites that no one ever bothered to put together before. Suddenly, we were able to start collaborating with each other. Then it occurred to each other we could also talk offline as well. So last summer, a group of people got together and held a bar camp called Crisis Camp. And the idea was to just talk with people who were involved in first response to see what we could do the next time there happened to be a disaster. We had a disaster in January in Haiti. As we were all trying to figure out what to do, it occurred to us that it was possible to take the Crisis Camp idea and rush them into the communities as quickly as possible. So this Saturday, after the earthquake struck, we had half a dozen crisis camps taking place all over the US. The week after that, there were 12 of them. The week after that, there were 20 of them. We literally got more than 1,000 people together at hackathons around the country, in the UK, in Canada, in Colombia, to create tools. Tools such as Traduit. No one had ever bothered to make a translation tool to go between Creole and English, so we made an iPhone app and an Android app over one weekend. But we were just getting warmed up. If you take a look at the picture up at the top, that's what Google Map looks like when you squeeze into Port-au-Prince. That wasn't good enough for search and rescue teams and anyone else working on the ground, so hundreds of volunteers used OpenStreetMap and literally traced by hand everything they could find on the ground. This picture is out of focus, but I really don't care because this is proof of what happened. We got this from a search and rescue team, a photo that he took from his camera phone showing the OpenStreetMap tool he was using to get to places that were turned to rubble. Things had changed in a very short amount of time, 15 years. Before, there was nothing we could really do except donate blood, donate money. But as the internet matured. We learned how to collaborate. We learned how to put the internet to use. And suddenly we found ourselves changing the way we did volunteerism, changing the very meaning of volunteerism in a way that we didn't even think was possible. Thank you very much. Don't slip.